so excited. What's going on, everybody? This is your man, Chaplain Bailey, Lionel Bailey. Lionel is here on a Saturday morning. I am super excited that I have a special guest for everyone that's going to be watching this live or on demand. Hey, I am excited that you have decided to come and join us for this wonderful, wonderful interview I'm having with my man, Vin. So who am I? Well, my name is Lionel. I am a coach, a minister, and a chaplain for the United States military. I am a friend to many, but a confidant to a very, very, very few. And I help people through personal growth, spiritual growth, leading to social change. That's what I do. How do I do that? Through public speaking, workshops, as well as through podcasting and coaching. So if you're interested, please make sure you leave me a DM and I will make sure I reach back to you, man. So what I need you to do is please engage with us, make a comment either now or on demand, as well as make sure that you go ahead on and hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you're on YouTube watching this. To all my people on Twitter, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, I think this is going to be a great, actually, I don't think this is going to be a wonderful conversation. So I'm going to ask you to grab your coffee, your water, whatever drink you prefer. And we are going to have a great, great time. And we're going to come back on the other side with our guest. The topic we're going to talk about today is how pain can be a potential blessing in your life. So I'll see you on the other side. Go ahead and grab your coffee and your favorite drink. Well, we're back on the other side, and I am here live with my man, Vin Infante. Did I say that right, Vin? Uh-oh, I can't hear you. Why can I not hear you, bro? There you go. There we go. Gotcha.
Got it?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it happens sometimes. No worries. So how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I had a little bit of running around to do this morning, so I decided it's going to be a nice casual Saturday morning, be a little dressed down, get here, and then this man upstages me in his dress rehearsal.
Hey, look, y'all, when I first came on, he saw me, I was like buttoned up. Y'all know this is my style. This is always me. And he was like, hey, dude, you got to fix that. And so, hey, he did tell you guys that Vin had on a hat because he's been running around with his family and his young 2-year. Now look at him, y'all, trying to fix his hair. I've been laughing since we first connected. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Hey, Vin, so I'm in the Pac Northwest, also known as the Pacific Northwest, and you are coming from one of my favorite states, man, New York State. So what's the weather like over there?
Well, I'm glad that you asked, Lionel. We have a high chance of snow today and some rain.
Oh, that's funny. I'm not that professional, am I? Well, I pride myself on being professional. There you go.
No, I love it, man. I'm giving you a little weather report over here, according to my watch.
Hey, you know what I like about your setup is that you have your certificates in the background. So what are those certificates for, bro?
Well, those are the pieces of paper that tell me I'm qualified to do what I do. So I would put them in a level of importance. I would put my two on the left and right. Those are my
Yeah.
college degrees, and then in the center is actually my coaching certification. And
Nice.
so I actually value the coaching one more than the degrees. I think that I learned more as I became a coach than I did from my formal training to become a therapist.
Ah, I've been thinking about adding, I have a few certificates as well. And I've
Mm-hmm.
thought about adding those to the background. So as a chaplain in the military,
Mm.
is one of the things that I do is that I move every so often. So based on where, what like we like to say, Uncle Sam needs us, we move here and there. And so my studio would change the background if I can make it, it would change every so many years. So that's going to be interesting, man. But I thought about adding my certificate just because of what I do and how I do it. There's a lot of what they call it, imposter syndrome people
Mm. Oh yeah.
of these days. So it's like having people who actually are qualified and have been vetted by other folks say, yeah, this person's legit in their area of conversation. I think it's important. What
I
about
agree.
you, man? Yeah.
I look at it like today. There's so many coaches. Everybody's a coach.
Mm.
I mean, my 1 year old daughter is a coach. Probably. She hasn't told me yet, but I'm sure she is because everybody's a coach. Going out, you go out, you're at an event. There's like 60 people there. At least 58 of them are coaches. There's
Oh, hey, I was on a Clubhouse. Do you get on Clubhouse at all?
I was on there when it first came out,
Mm.
and the amount of people, this is not really meant to be an insult, but it will sound a bit like it. The amount of people on there that don't know how to speak is just, it hurts my damn head. You'll go into rooms and they let one person on stage and the person just rants for 40 minutes and then you just jump out of the room because they don't know how to moderate. That person doesn't know how to speak. I spent a lot of time on Clubhouse. I was like, this is kind of a waste of my time.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's probably one or maybe two rooms that I always go into. One in particular because it's kind of entertaining, but it's just one of those things. Like when I'm leaving the office, it's like, what am I going to do on the way home? Because my drive home is like 40 minutes. So I'll just hop on there. It could be like super serious, or it could be like so hilarious. I'm like laughing all the way home. So, but there's another room. I mentioned it because there's another room, and I'm not gonna say the name of the room, but it's like full of coaches. Like everybody on there tag like lines like coach this, coach that, and I'm like, why do I want to be in this room right now? But when you talk about like all the coaches and everybody's a coach, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, I guess. So,
Yeah.
but hey, man, tell me. Obviously, you are an expert. Your credentials speak for themselves. I mean, you have been. Your work has been noticed not only by Tony Robbins, who's a gigantic public figure in the United States and around the world for what he does, and you affiliated with his organization as well as what you've done for yourself as a psychotherapist, right? That's huge, bro. So I am happy because I deal with people in my professional life who are going through all kinds of things. And so I work with therapists and counselors like every single day, every week. During the week, I'm working with counselors and therapists. It's in my line of work. So tell us a little bit about like what qualifies you other than just your own, like, what's your background is what I'm getting at there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, people that want to hear what I have to say is what qualifies me now.
No, no, that's good.
I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
good.
It's funny. I remember I was going through the fire academy, and when I was a firefighter, there was this guy who's standing in line next to me. It's kind of like you might see this in the military where people be like, "Oh, what'd you do before this?" It's the same concept when you're going through the
Gotcha.
fire academy. Everybody's like, "What'd you do before this?" And I told one guy, I was like, "Oh, I was a therapist." He's like, I don't really get what you do. No offense. He's like, but aren't you the guy with an opinion that people pay? And I was like, yeah, kind of. So
That's wrong, man.
I love it. Listen, I actually embrace that. On
Yeah.
if you check out my Instagram later, you'll see it literally just says, I'm just the guy with an opinion.
Yeah, I saw that. That's pretty cool. But obviously your opinion matters, bro, to a
Yeah,
lot of people.
to some
Yeah.
people, I think, yeah. So I mean, I guess on the other side of it, the credential side, because I don't think
Yeah.
anything really makes anybody qualified. You know,
Mm,
I've found that even for myself, I've there's things that I know, there's ways that I could help people, and there's better processes that I use to serve than therapists who've been in the field for 40, 30, 50 years.
yeah.
And I don't think I'm better than them. It's just I have a different set of skills and knowledge. And that time in the field, the amount of credential that they have, that doesn't always mean anything. So that's one of the
Right.
biggest things that I've come to say. I think what really makes me qualified is that I continue to put in the effort, the energy, and the work to learn and continue to keep myself up to date and study and
Mm,
find new and exciting tools and ways to help people. I
right.
spent over 13 years in mental health. I've worked with thousands of people at this point. I've worked on a large scale, small scale. I worked doing one-to-one. I've done group coaching, group therapy. I think the best is doing one-to-ones. I have a lot of fun with it.
Mm,
But at the end of the day, what I'm really looking for is now creating more impact, spreading the message even more, and reaching a billion lives.
yeah.
So jumping on podcasts and getting speaking engagements where I can expand my reach and my influence is really the biggest part of my purpose right now.
Yeah, speaking of like, the influence in a billion people, man, I think that's pretty cool, right? So you definitely have a mission purpose. But look, everyone's listening. Vin has been modest, right? This guy's been, on some major networks, magazines. People recognize his work, and he's here to help us today. And so I'm excited to hear about what Vin has to say, particularly about this conversation of pain as potential. So let me ask you this question, man. Why is this one of the subject areas that you feel like you can add value for people listening?
So I love to talk about pain being potential because of the fact that that's what was the massive catalyst to change my life. I
Mm,
was formerly in as a kid, I struggled a lot. I got bullied and I struggled a lot with mental health. I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, panic disorder.
mm,
And my therapist wanted to put me on medication and all the things, right? Because that's kind of what we hear in today's society is you never get rid of your anxiety. You can't get rid of depression. These are lifelong sentences. They're a part of who
mm,
you are. You have to take this medication. You have to go to therapy weekly. And I had always refused to kind of believe that, especially because I was in therapy and it never helped. And so I was very much curious about there has to be a way to fix this, right? And
right.
I even look at the way we view mental health in today's society, and it's very confusing to me because we have solutions to every problem out there, right? If you could think of something right now, you probably wouldn't even be able to find something that we just have as a lingering problem. And even if we have it as a lingering problem, we're finding ways to find the solution and overcome it, right?
Right.
So for some reason with mental health, we're just like it's a permanent thing. There's no solution to the problem. It's just always going
Mm,
to be there. And I always felt that that was just not a proper statement. I didn't think that that was true.
mm,
And as I went through my life and I was dealing with all these different problems and all these different struggles, and I couldn't figure out a way out of it, that's where I started getting even more depressed. I became suicidal, right? I had a lot of these ideations. I would do self harm. I never attempted, but it was always like, will I do it this week? And just a lot of planning and
mm.
all that other stuff. And I've
Well,
come to
yeah.
learn.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
No, go ahead. No, just a quick second here. So when you talked
Yeah.
about, first of all, I want to say, hey, to everyone watching YouTube, thank you so much for commenting. If you have any questions for Vin, go ahead on and drop a comment there, and we'll make sure we pose that question to Vin. Hey, so when you talked about suicide ideation, bro, that is one of the things that I do. One of the things that I help people with.
Mm.
So I do over 3,000. I connect with about 3 to 5,000 people a year doing suicide prevention awareness training. So I'm a personally certified suicide prevention awareness trainer. This is a big issue, brother. Not only it is huge in the military,
Mm,
huge problem that I deal with. Not only have I, unfortunately, seen people walk in rooms who people who've succeeded, but I've spent my career helping people to turn away or deal with those ideations. So, um, what would you say? What were some of the issues that led you to, maybe not as specifically, but what was it like going through having those feelings? Because a lot of people who have those feel like they can't talk. And I know the
right.
constant argument, when I say argument, debate that I have with professionals is, hey, man, some signs, you can always see the signs. That's one camp. And the other camp is, nope, you can't see it coming. It just happened. And when you least expected. What is your viewpoint about that?
So I can only speak from my personal experience
Right,
because
right,
I don't know what's going on in other people's heads. But for me, what I've come to learn, at least I think this one I'll give is a more general one. What I've come to
right.
learn about suicide as a whole is that for the most part, it's not that people want their life to end, it's that they want whatever they're struggling with to end. And they don't
Mm,
see the possibility. They don't see at the end of the tunnel, there's no light there. And so they're not realizing that the length of the tunnel is just a different size for them.
mm,
Because there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. It's just more of like, can you keep going? Or are you willing to keep going?
mm,
For me personally, I've come to look at the reason I never committed suicide is because I had more to look at.
mm,
I think there's a lot of debate if suicide is selfish or not. I think it's a selfish thing because I could look at where I never wanted to go through with it because I thought about who's going to find my body, right? Like
mm,
at the time that I was suicidal, I was like 17, 18. So the main thought that ran through my mind was one of the chores I had every day at home was to empty the dishwasher. And
mm,
so one of the thoughts that consistently ran through my mind is like my mom also cooked every single night. So there's always a
mm,
very big knife in the dishwasher. And so that was one of the main thoughts of how I might do it. And I was always concerned with what would happen if my mom walked in and found me on the floor in a pool of my own blood. Like I
mm,
created a very powerful visualization in my head. I was like, what would that be like for my family? What would that be like for my mom to come home to that? Because my mom's always the first one home because she was a school teacher. So she'd be home around 3, right? I'd get
mm,
out of school 2:30. I had a 10-minute walk from my school to my house. So I would always be home first. And then my mom would come home shortly after and she would, hi Vin, how's it, how's your day, whatever. Like always that small, loving mom. So that
mm,
was always the main thought that would kind of pop around in my head is she'd come home, she'd find me on the floor in a pool of my own blood. How would she react to that? How would
mm,
my dad react to that? How would my I mean, I didn't really have many friends. I had like one friend, but how would he feel about it? And it actually was more of an unbearable thing for me to think about how my mom would feel if she walked in and found me like that.
mm. Wow. Wow, what a powerful statement. I mean, you went as far as actually having a plan. Wanted to see if I can. One of the guests, Flo, is joining us, and hey, Flo, thanks. Flo says, "Hey, man, I'm glad you didn't do it. Grateful for the suicide prevention work you do. It's a huge problem, especially in youth
Mm,
these days." Wow, such a true statement. I deal with it. Let me tell y'all something. Hey, Vin, people don't know, but there are a lot of folks in military service who are having this issue, particularly our young people.
yeah.
Young people are coming into the service, and for whatever reason, it's not yielding the results that they want for whatever in whatever the case may be. And what we've discovered is some of these folks may have some mental health issues before they come into the military. But it's kind of like a catch-22 because when you
Mm,
get into the military, there's a certain amount of stress and training that you go through.
yes.
And if you have any mental health issues, you're going to the training will heighten those feelings and those moments and moods of depression. And what we found as well is that some people may have medication, But when they get into the military, they may come off that medication, and it creates all kinds of problems. So, uh, what I'm always interested in is what are some of the stories and things that you're hearing, or as a therapist that you've dealt with, that people could identify. So if a person is listening and they're going, well, when people are listening to us, Vin, they're thinking, well, that's not my situation. That's not mine. And they're looking for reasons to either identify, or they're
Mm.
looking with what you're saying so they can go, oh, that's exactly. So, like, what would you say to someone who may have that experience? They're dealing with ideation and they're trying to figure out how to either get help, or maybe they're down planning, saying, well, it's really not that important, but they have the thoughts and feelings all the time. But no, they dismiss it. What would you say to someone who's dismissing that they're having these experiences?
I think a lot of the times why people might dismiss something is because when you acknowledge it, it feels worse. But I think it's also because people don't really have a plan in place. So it's a lot easier to push it off instead of acknowledge it and then not know what to do with the acknowledgement. Like, it kind of sucks to sit there and be like, wow, yeah, I'm actually thinking about taking my own life. I had a moment, it's funny that you're a reverend because I went to a Catholic high school.
Oh,
And
hey,
one of
don't
the
don't count that against me, brother.
no, you're good, man. You're
I'm kidding.
good.
I'm kidding.
I'm sure you're fine. Let me find my cross. Hold on. But so no, but there was the principal of my school. He was a Monsignor,
Mm,
and he would sit with me when I was going through a lot of my stuff. He actually knew my family because he knew my brother from a previous school, and my
mm,
brother was a bit of a troublemaker, so they got very well acquainted.
mm,
Now, what was interesting was him and I had sat together, and I told him, I said, one day I just walked into his office and I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. He's like, what, like in
mm.
school? And I was like, no, I don't want to be here, period. Like, I don't.
Wow.
And so he had a very stern look on his face after, right? And then he scribbled a few things down on a piece of paper and he slid it across the desk to me. And he looked at me and he said, where are you on that list? I want you to circle it. And I
Mm,
looked down and it just said thoughts, planning, attempts. And
mm.
so that was a very crude drawing of, right, a suicidal like assessment, right? It's a very
Right.
quick assessment. And so I remember I just pointed to planning, and then I remember I just started crying because it's that realization that I feel like my life is so terrible that I'm actually finding ways to get out of my life, not even the situation that's terrible, just my life in general.
Right.
That's a heavy, and that's probably why people push it off, because that was a heavy moment. Like, I
Mm,
remember just the act of pointing at planning made me break down and start crying, because
wow.
that's a shit feeling. That's a
Right.
terrible realization. And what I would tell people is that you have to get to the level of honesty that you need, because you
Mm-hmm.
can't start changing your life without honesty in it.
Right.
And once you have that honesty, it's also important to know what to do. So I didn't really know what to do as a kid, but now I have some sort of knowledge about depression. And what
Mm-hmm.
I've come to learn about depression is it's going to be tied into this statement, is that feelings aren't facts, they're just indicators.
Mm,
Depression is also just a feeling, right?
mm,
And there's a lot of interesting research. One of my favorite things to suggest to the audience is look into it's called the analytical rumination hypothesis. And it's the study of where depression came up in our ancestors and how it was used. Because every emotion, even the negative ones that we have, typically has a positive intent behind it. Depression is actually meant to help you. Depression is used to force the person inwards to look at deeper interpersonal issues that they have no solution or resolution for. So when you're feeling that there's this aspect of depression is coming up in your life, what it actually means is that you are experiencing a persistent problem which you have no answer to just yet. So when
mm.
you're being forced into these isolated states, right? Because that's what depression does. You're forced into isolation. You're withdrawing from people. You're withdrawing from others. You're laying in bed, perhaps, and you're sitting there and you're like, I'm sad. I'm sad. I'm sad. Instead of looking at it like I'm sad. I'm sad. Start asking, what is my body trying to tell me? What is my mind not acknowledging? Where am I lacking honesty in my life right now? And then what is it that I need to do to start changing that? Because once you start coming into the solution, the problem and the place that people also get stuck is once they have that honesty, they may not want to take action. Like a big thing that we see is common is people are in relationships that aren't right for them, but they're not able to actually get to the place where they then do the thing they need to do, like end the relationship, because the pain of being alone is a lot worse than that aspect of just being honest, saying the relationship doesn't work for me and going and being alone. But that's the thing that keeps them stuck. They're more
Mm,
afraid of being alone than being in a terrible relationship, but the terrible relationship is causing the depression, right?
mm.
And so there's so many intricacies, and I think that's where people need the support to walk through that path.
Wow, wow. I mean, Flo said, I'll put it up again, but she said it was such a powerful perspective and tips. Absolutely, totally agree with it. You know, man, I mean, you're saying a lot of things that resonates with me in dealing with this type, but I've never thought about it as how it can help you. How depression is sort of like, would you call them like alarm signals, or saying, hey, you really need to, focus or do something about this situation. What if, how do people find the help? Right. In other words, like listening, and I understand, Vin, that everything you said, like, yeah, I'm in this space. It's not good for me. I need to do something different, but for whatever reason, people don't get the help that they need, or they won't get the help that they need. And this is an issue for my line of work, because the assumption is if you need help, then you can't hack it. You're weak. You don't have what it takes to do. Now, I work with Marines and
Yep.
sailors, but I mean, the Marine Corps side of what I do, look, it's a very, very, very dark culture. It can be at times.
Yep.
And so how do we help people get over the stigma of, look, there's nothing wrong if you're struggling with mental health? I mean, what have you seen, and how can you help people in your line of work say, look, you need to get some help, and I'm about to get the help that I need?
It's always about relatability and leverage,
Mm,
right? If somebody doesn't want the help, it's because it's not relatable and you haven't leveraged it well enough yet, right?
mm.
And this is what I've come to see. So, for instance, you're talking to a Marine. All right, you got this guy who's nicknamed Jarhead. Why is he nicknamed Jarhead? Because he's also nicknamed Crayon Eater. Why is he nicknamed Crayon Eater? Because they're very
Oh,
simple guys,
were
right?
you in the Marine Corps? That's their favorite. Hey, Vin, that's one of their favorite sayings, man. They the Navy, they tell the Navy's like, the Marines tell Navy personnel, well, you're only here to give us rides and transportation. Then the Navy's like, well, you can't learn anything but how to use crayons,
Right.
or better yet, eat them.
Well, I wasn't in the Marines, but I'm a former firefighter, and
Yeah,
the firefighter training in New York is run like a paramilitary organization, and
right.
we also had a lot of military guys with us. And honestly, being around a lot of the military guys, I think they're definitely jarheads. So
Oh man, and the things that they do is hilarious. Some of it is like, oh my god. Then others like, dude, really?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
they would be there. There is an issue I remember in one of the textbooks. Like it was a and the it's a spelling error, and it was supposed to be fire retardant, right? Because like that it's like fire resistant, and it said fire retarded. And so one of the guys was like, hey guys, and he's an ex-military guy. He's like, hey guys, look at me, I'm fire retarded. Like it's like, yeah, you. I was like, you're definitely ex-military. I'll tell you that.
Oh man. I
But
tell you what, there's definitely a lot of laughing moments. A lot of laughing moments. Yeah. So,
yeah, you get a lot of fun stuff, and I believe that's one of the things is it's the levity that brings moments of peace to these guys.
Right.
And a lot of them don't know how to get moments of peace on their own. So they'll make the dark humor, the bad jokes, et cetera,
Right.
because that's all they really know.
Yeah.
I've come to find it's about relatability. So if the guy
Mm.
doesn't feel like he needs help, right? If you need help, you're weak. Okay, just relate it back to something they know that actually makes sense for them. I had one kid who was kind of, for instance, he was 19 years old. The parents wanted me to work with him, and this was relatively early in my coaching days. I was still coming out of the therapy realm and
Mm.
stepping into coaching, so I was willing to take pretty much everyone and anyone. And he didn't want help, but like he
Mm.
wanted help, but he didn't want help. He's like, I got to figure my stuff out, but I also don't want to see anyone. So I was like,
Mm.
if you could get him on a call, man, I could probably change his mind. So the parents are like, okay, cool. We'll try and get him on a call. He gets on a call. I'm doing most of the talking. And I'm like, how do you feel about getting some services from me? He's like, I don't know, man. He's like, I've come to, if you need help, it's kind of weird. It means you
Yeah.
can't figure it out. I was like, all right, well, let me ask you something. You're a football player, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. Do you want to go face the entire team by yourself?
Mm.
He's like, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, you got what, 10 defensive minimum. You got 10 defensive guys right in front of you. Then you have the guys behind him. Then you have the guys behind him. You'd probably be playing a team of like 20 some odd guys by yourself. You okay with
Mm.
that? You gonna win the game? He's like, no, they'll probably kick my ass. I was like, of course they're gonna kick your ass. I was like, it's you versus 20. I was like, but what
Right.
if you got a good team around you? He's like, yeah, like then we could probably win. I was like, okay. So what if instead of it being like you're weak and incapable, it's just having a team? So now you could relate it even to the fire department, right? Because everybody has a team. Nobody
Right.
gets through life alone. And I think that's the biggest thing is
Mm.
people don't realize that. But even in the fire department, we would have 3 to 4 guys that would operate a hose line. You'd have the
Mm.
guy on the nozzle. You'd have the backup guy who would support him. Then you'd have another guy who kind of just be running around, checking out kinks, making sure that there's nothing, getting the hose line stuck, right? And then
Right.
you have the guy that is operating the flow. And you would tell him, hey, like I need more water. Or, hey, too much pressure. And so we had a whole team to be able to do this. And so what I would do is I would relate it back to something that's familiar. So you got the guy, talking to the military guy. You don't want help? Okay. How would that work if you were in the battlefield? How would
Mm.
that work if you had nobody covering your six? What if you were
Mm.
clearing rooms and you were the only one to clear and there's 10 freaking doors in that hallway? Are you going to survive that? Are you going to get through it?
Mm.
And they're going to come up with the logical answers and they'd be like, no. And you probably have to ask them other things. You'd be like, okay, well, what about use cases? Do you have one guy that carries the radio or does every guy carry the radio? Like
Mm.
the big radio, Do you have one guy that's carrying the bazooka or do you have everybody carrying the bazooka? And it's about getting people into understanding that they actually already use teams and that this is nothing different. This is actually the same. Because now you could then also relate it to like what's important to you. That's where you get the leverage. Like what's
Right.
important to you? Okay, well you have a daughter at home. Well, what if you come home and because you've never been working on your mental health, you come home with really terrible PTSD and you wind up being one of the guys that once he gets out of the military service commits suicide. What happens
Mm.
with your daughter? Do you care about her? Does that matter to you? And a lot of people might say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. But that's not true because the reality is people don't change because they feel good. People change because the pain of staying the same finally becomes worse than the pain of change. Because
Mm.
change is hard, change is scary, and change requires what I was telling you before. It requires ownership and accountability, which a lot of people don't know what to do with. So if you could show them the plan, if you could show them that the pain of staying the same is going to be worse than the pain of change, if you could relate it to something they know and get leverage on what's important to them, more likely than not, you will get somebody open and willing to finally do the work.
Mm. Wow, that's great. So hope you guys are taking notes. Good, and that's good information. Helping people to see that these real life experiences of how you need help and how you function as a team is a critical part. And I like to say to people that, having coaches and therapists and people alongside you, consider them a part of your team, your life team, right?
Exactly.
That's huge, right? Having people on your side to help you with various things. Even I tell people all the time, because some folks ask, like, how do you as a chaplain, like you deal with everybody's stuff? Like, do you have people? I'm like, I have my own therapist. Every chaplain has a chaplain, right? They should anyway, because you need people to talk to about the stuff that you are going through yourself. So, hey, Vin, so what does a session look like for you? I think you kind of talked about it a little bit, but I want to hone in like, okay, we've talked about your story. What are some of what got you to the place where you are right now? Like what started this train for you? Then you talked about your depression and how you dealt with that. And then you talked about the transition from, being a therapist into now coaching people. What should people expect or when they're working with you?
They should expect a whole lot of fun.
I bet that's true. I bet that's true, man. Yeah.
Humor is one of my top tier values. And funny enough, I was actually doing a value exercise with a friend yesterday. He was teaching me a really cool NLP technique with value systems. And so obviously the best way to learn is by doing. So
Right.
humor is like, I think for me, it was number 4. So it's a lot of fun working with me, honestly. But what people can expect is honestly to get out whatever they put in. Because I do a unique approach of a hybrid of therapy, mentoring, and coaching, there isn't a specific way that I'm going to show up because I don't actually have an agenda when I work with clients. I tell them, here's what we do, right? There's the 3-pronged approach of how I utilize my modalities. One is therapy. Therapy is the aspect of understanding who you are. It's learning about your past. It's learning about your depth. It's learning about what resonates with you, what alignment is for you. It's creating that clear conscious awareness of you. Then we have the aspects of coaching. Coaching is not any of that. Coaching is more about raising your standards and challenging you to operate within a capacity that you've never operated in. It's about really setting the bar higher and setting a new standard for your life and what you're willing to get out of it. And lastly, mentoring. Mentoring is a very personal touch. Mentoring is about sharing my knowledge, my experiences, the things I've done, because it kind of ties back into a model of CBT where there's this thing we call it's called modeling. And
hey,
what
hey Vin,
modeling
hey
yeah.
Vin, you're gonna have to acronym down a little bit. You'd sound like the military. So what is CBT for people that are listening? Like, what is that?
Well, that was the acronym. So
Oh.
see,
Crayon.
yeah, crayon biting trainees. You can use that with the Marines. Feel free.
That's what I
Where's
was thinking. That's what I was like. Oh, that's a crayon moment. There you go.
them crayon biting trainees at? So, cognitive behavioral therapy is what CBT is the acronym for, and cognitive behavioral therapy has this one thing in it that we call modeling.
Mm-hmm.
Modeling is about finding someone who's gotten the results of something you'd like to achieve, and then essentially just copying them. Right? Because success leaves clues. So if somebody could do it, if it's humanly possible, then you're human and you could do it too, unless you're one of the lizard people we don't know about. So as long as you're a human and not a lizard person, this will work for you. Now, that's where Evan, collect yourself.
I'm sorry, y'all. I hope you got the reference. Oh my God, I hope you got the reference. I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
So one of the things that I find mentoring to do for people is it allows me to share my life experiences and give you my roadmap to start utilizing the tools and doing the things that I did so you could get where you'd like to go. Funny enough, I heard somebody put it this way and I really liked it, where they said, mentoring is about helping people become more like you, where coaching is more about challenging people to become more of themselves. And I was like, I really like that, because if you like the things I've done, like where I talk about how I've overcome depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. I haven't had a panic attack in 10 years. I barely experience anxiety and I barely have moments of depression. And I tell people, if you want to do that, like do the things I did, become more like me.
Right.
But to step into the best version of yourself, you need to become more like you and you need to set new standards and challenges. So that's where I tell people, like, this is my method. I do therapy, mentoring, and coaching. And the way that I show up is in the way you need me. You're going to hop on a call. I'm going to say, hey, how was your week? What's new? You're going to tell me something. I'm going to be like, oh, today's a therapy day. And then we're going to talk. And then I'll be like, okay, today's a coaching day. Or we're going to get on another session. I'll be like, you need to hear some perspective. I'm going to give you my experiences. Today is a mentoring day.
Right.
And I don't really have a specific flow. I'm not telling people we're going to do 3 months of therapy and then we'll do some coaching, and everything tends to tie into one another. So, however, the sessions need to flow, however, we need to discuss things, whatever is going to come up, whatever you need to hear, because I'm truly just getting on the call to serve you. So, whatever you need to hear is what's going to come out of my mouth. And I, I like to flow a lot in my conversations. Unless you ask me specifically, Vin, next session, I want to talk about this. Can you give me information on it? Otherwise, it's just like, let's get on and see what comes up. And that's how I'm going to assist you today.
Awesome. Awesome. So really, really depends on what the mood, what the what the subject matter may be, or what the individual feels they need to have attention. Wow,
Right.
great conversation. As we kind of close out and head toward the end here, man, I'm wondering like one of the I looked at some of your stuff, and when you talked about cognitive behavioral therapy, I've been working on some stuff along the lines of helping people to identify, like, going back to your childhood and looking at traumatic experiences, and then thinking about how they are affecting your current behavior. Like, what would you help people? Like, how could you help people to make that transition to, hey, look, take the risk of faith, go back, look at what's happening within your childhood or what may have happened and how that's affecting you. And the reason I bring that up, because I find it to be more the case in relationships, when people in relationships and they're sabotaging themselves, or like getting, like, always climaxing in a relationship where they get to this particular point, but the relationship always drops off. And it could be for various reasons. It could be because of the strange lack of communication skills, or any other these things that happen in relationship. So what
Right.
I'm interested in people talking about is, look, part of you being coached, and part of you dealing with depression, and part of you dealing with these things, it's very helpful to go back and think about what were the traumatic experiences in your life and how are they showing up today. Can you speak to that at all? Like, even like maybe briefly speak to, how you help people, or what people should do or can do when they go back and investigate their traumatic childhood experiences.
Sure. I mean, trauma is actually it's not a super complex thing. I think people think it's complex because they don't know how to overcome it and they don't know how to deal with it. But when you look at trauma, it's really just an intense emotional engagement locked into the body.
Mm,
So they found, even through some cool research, that people have been able to work out trauma by literally just working out, like going to the gym.
right, right, right,
Because it's releasing it, right?
right, right.
There's
That
another
that's
interesting.
Yeah, that's like, dude, that's like a number one. You're a workout dude too, right? You're jarhead in that sense. Oh, hey, why is he flexing? No, you can't see anything because I got my button-up shirt on.
See?
But
Loose button up, man. Take it
but
off,
no,
Rev.
take it off, Rev. Hey, listen, you working out, man. I'm telling you, I cannot, like, when I go through a day and I haven't worked out, I can feel like in the afternoon, late afternoon, I feel the impact. If I didn't work out that day, and when pressures and things start coming from many different areas, I can feel like, man, you didn't really put yourself in a position today to tackle these things. So to everyone's listening, don't underestimate the power of working out. And it doesn't have to be anything complicated. It could be just a few minutes. It could be a good walk in the morning, or whatever the case may be. So, no, speak. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think that was a great point that people need to keep in mind when it comes to dealing with some of the trauma from that past.
Sure. Well, and so the other part that I was going to say is that a lot of people struggle with trauma because of the fact that they have a specific story in their mind. Life is it's just a string of your belief system constantly validating itself, right? If
Mm,
and people don't really understand that. Like, your belief system is
mm,
exactly how you see the world. We don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. So if you have a specific perspective, you're going to take in specific information that's going to validate whatever it is that you believe. That's more of a subconscious process than a conscious process. We're not walking around all day saying, oh, I want to validate the shit I believe. It's more
Mm.
about that's just what kind of happens as we sit there and we go through life. So one of the biggest things is really starting to, one, question your belief systems. Two is understand that every single thing that we're doing, like even the thoughts that we're having, they come with some sort of a positive intent. I have a client I work with who's very dissociated from life, like completely, virtually numb, right? Had a little bit of a traumatic upbringing with his family. Why is he dissociative? It's very simple. He's dissociative because there's a positive intent behind being dissociative. There's a very positive intent behind feeling nothing, having nothing, and no real emotional connections to anything. He was hurt in his childhood. So now the
Mm.
positive intent is that if he feels nothing, he can't get hurt again. You see how that works? It's a very
Mm.
simple process. A lot of people don't understand this. And so, because we can't get to the understanding of what the positive intent is, we actually can't change the behavior because we're not going to be able to change the behavior if it's still serving a purpose. Now, that's where the faulty belief systems come in. You're not in your childhood anymore. You actually, funny enough, haven't even grown since your childhood if you're still
Wow.
reliving that experience. So, what I'm actually dealing with this gentleman, for instance, I'm not dealing with a 21-year-old kid. I'm dealing with a 7-year-old kid,
Mm.
right? Now that's where some of the inner child work comes in. It's like, okay, what did you need to hear as a kid that you didn't hear? Because what you're actually craving is the security to be able to feel again. You're craving that permission to be able to know that you don't have to be this way, but you're going to still be that way because it served a purpose. And here's one of the biggest factors: even if the outcome isn't positive, because there's still a positive intent, we're going to keep doing. So dissociation worked for him at 7, it doesn't work for him at 21. However, it's been learned that there's a positive intent, that it gives a positive outcome, and we haven't figured out another thing that could yield a positive outcome. So we're going to stick with this. So now at 21, he's having trouble with relationships. He's having trouble with friendships. He's having trouble with even his own interpersonal emotions and his own growth and development as a person. But it's been a positive and impactful behavior for so long that he can't actually change it until he can, one, thank it for its positive intent. Implementing gratitude is powerful for releasing negative emotions. There is a positive intent. Thank it for that. Don't be bitter. Don't be angry. Thank it. I thank you for how you've helped me navigate one of the hardest moments in my life. Number two, what would be a better thing to start embracing? This clearly is not giving me the positive outcome I'm looking for. What is the positive outcome you're looking for? And then number three, what do I have to start doing and embracing if I want to get the positive outcome I'm looking for in step two? Then that's going to start shifting behaviors. And we also got to talk about, this is not even a number four, this is a sidebar. This is like a whole nother count. Subsection 1A, what is the parts of your inner child that you need to heal? Subsection part B, why did you develop this intent, this behavior in the first place? And subsection 3, can you change the story and the perspective that you held? That perhaps this has not hurt you in a way, perhaps it's elevated you and changed you and helped you grow in a certain way. And number 4 is also, last piece of this subsection, is that as time goes on, our perspectives continue to be skewed. Maybe things weren't as bad as you recall them. Maybe you've actually made it worse in your mind. Statistically speaking, that's what people do. For instance, when we even look at people's memories are terrible. That's why they started really cutting down on eyewitness testimony, because there's a lot of research that shows in moments of heightened emotional engagements, what winds up happening is everything else gets skewed. Your vision gets skewed, your memory is skewed, your perception is skewed because your emotions are so heightened that you actually can't maintain a very logical and factual basis. And they found this time and time again as to why they started getting more and more skeptical of eyewitness testimony. So they'd be like, yes, I'm 100% sure that's the guy. And the guy goes to jail for 20 years. And then it's like, oh, the guy that was over there was actually the
Mm.
guy.
Right. Right.
So there's a lot. There's a lot to do, but it's not super complex work. It's just work in general.
Right. Right. Wow, man. Wow. What powerful information that people can take who are listening and are learning. Just looking at some notes here, people sending comments in. So, hey, Vin, great information, man. I mean, we've covered a lot of groundwork in just short of a, what, we've been going in almost an hour, but it doesn't seem like almost an hour. That's
I'm
good.
glad we have fun.
Exactly. Hey, Vin, can I be honest with you? It's not always like this. Some people's like, how long have we been going? Like 10 minutes? Oh, man. So, hey, so tell us about, as we wrap up here, what programs or what are you working on these days that people can, if they want to know more about you? Obviously, I have Vin's website, but if they want to connect with you and know more about what you're working on these days, like tell everybody, how they can get in contact with you and what you can offer them right off the bat.
Sure. So best ways to get in contact, you go check out my website, go to Instagram. Instagram is where I'm probably most active, and you can send me DMs. I always answer. So my Instagram is vin.infante, which is exactly how my name is spelled right there. Vin.infante for Instagram, TikTok. You can check me out on LinkedIn. It's Vin Infante. And there's one thing I promote for people that I would love for people to check out is I have a free resource on my website. It is, so you guys have probably heard of vision boards before. However, I think a lot of modern day vision boards are bullshit. I really don't like them. I think they're just useless wall decorations. And so I aim to find a way to create something better, and I call it the mission board. And so this template will highlight how you can create a more powerful version of a vision board by utilizing, it's like a 10-page template. You guys could have it. It's free. Just put in your email, it gets sent right to you. I also do one-to-one coaching. So as you know, we've been talking, a lot of the things that I'm talking about right now in this podcast, a lot of the concepts, these are things I'll go over with clients and help them overcome their issues. And one thing I'm currently working on, which is why I would encourage you guys to stay up to date with me, is I'm working on creating more lower ticket, cheaper items, free items. I'm continuing to find ways to really just put out a lot more value for people that would want access, but maybe can't afford my top tier coaching services. And so that's some of the ways that if people can't afford working with me right now, then that's cool, but stay in touch because there's going to be a lot more stuff coming out, lower ticket, free, cheap items, things that like this, for instance, where I could create a 10-page ebook perhaps on how to overcome trauma, something like that. So These are the things I'm really excited about working on because it really is about creating a lot more impact. And one-to-one is great, but impact in a billion lives is going to be done from stages and smaller things that I could provide.
Wow. Hey, everybody. Thank Vin so much for such a great guy. Woo. Hey, man, I appreciate everything that you shared. So much value. Everyone, make sure you reach out to Vin. Check him out on his website. Check him out on IG. For those who are listening on the podcast, I'll have all of his information in the show notes, including his websites and his social media handles. And I'm so grateful that you guys have decided to stop by and listen and watch. And for those of you who are checking us out on YouTube, thank you so much. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Check out Vin. I'm sure he's around there somewhere on YouTube or some of their podcasts. Hey, do you have your own podcast?
I don't know.
Oh my goodness. Well, you probably don't need one. So anyway, I was going to say, hey, go check him out. But obviously he's here. I think there's some other podcast episodes from other podcasters that I'll try to link as well. So you guys can follow Vin. But I think going to his website is probably the best way to get started with him. My brother, I am so glad that you came by and added value to everyone listening today. Make sure you go ahead on and check out his stuff. Continue to follow us here on the Words for Change podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button or help us out. How can you help us out? Yeah, how can you help us out, man? Just subscribe, share, like, make a comment. Any of these things will help us continue to get the message out that we're all about helping people grow personally, spiritually, leading to change in their society, in their community, in their home, and in their heart. That's what we're all about. So I want to thank everyone for coming through and joining Vin and I today. And I look forward to seeing you next Sunday. Not Saturday. We did Saturday because Vin was available today. But we typically on Sunday at 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And we look forward to seeing you there. Until then, peace, chicken grease. See y'all again.